right, Proverbs 2. Let's call this one My Son, If. Understanding that this proverb seems to take an if-then structure, where in the first 4 verses it will say, if you do these certain things, son. Then in verses 5 through 8, it says you will gain understanding among other things, as he is going to pick up that concept in verses 9 through 19, saying you will likewise then understand something we saw back in Proverbs 1. You will then understand righteousness, justice, and equity. Concepts that can seem cheesy to us, but Solomon is going to take pains in this chapter to help us understand a little bit more of why they aren't so cheesy. Beginning, like we said, though, in verses 1 through 4, he is going to say, son, if you receive his instruction, treasure these things that he is teaching or trying to teach up in his heart. If you are attentive to them, incline your ear to them or incline yourself to them. If you call out to God for them and you raise your voice. And then ultimately, if you seek and search for them, similar to what the writer in Hebrews 11 is going to say, if you seek them diligently, as we have said in times past from the New King James Version, then verses 5 through 8, you will understand the fear of the Lord and you will find the knowledge of God. For another purpose statement, the Lord is the one who gives wisdom, guarding your paths or guarding the paths of justice and watching over the way of his people. Going on in verses 9 through 19 to give us another then statement stating, then you will understand righteousness, justice, and equity, as we have mentioned before. Going on in verse 11 of that section to say, you will have discretion and understanding, and they will deliver you from 3 things specifically: the way of evil, shady men, and the forbidden woman. As he will seem to go on from the second half of verse 12 on through verse 15 to describe those shady men as having perverted speech, not so much as telling dirty jokes, even though that might be part of it, but it's happening in the context of people who are using shady or questionable speech to twist, as we've often seen in the Psalms and now in the Proverbs, to put a twist or a spin on things, or essentially to pervert reality. So we'll go on to say they forsake upright paths. They walk in darkness. They rejoice in evil and prefer crooked paths, also showing an inclination for devious ways. As in verses 16 through 19, he is going to seem to describe the added benefits that the discretion that wisdom produces can give in keeping us away from the path of the forbidden woman, also described as the adulteress who forsakes or forgets the covenant she made with her God. Ultimately seeming to give us another purpose statement in verses 20 through 22, as he will say he is ultimately trying to keep you from these pitfalls so that you will walk the pathway of the good and keep to the pathways of righteousness, as he is literally going to conclude in verses 21 through 22. For the upright will inhabit the land, and those with integrity will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the treacherous will be rooted out of it. Solomon, once again, in what may be described as an if-then proverb, reminded me of coaches and mentors I've had who reminded me that you get out of life what you put into it, even beyond sports. If you put pro-commitment into a thing, you may get pro-results. But regardless of your talent level, if you refuse to put a pro level of commitment, you have no complaints or no basis for complaining for the lack of professional results. And so in this proverb, even though Solomon is not talking about sports, he is talking about principles that carry over to life, specifically letting his son know that if you seek it like silver and search for it as for hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord, not to mention all of the other components that he seems to describe that go along with getting, in my paraphrase, pro results. Most notably, as we mentioned from verse 9, righteousness, justice, and equity, things that can actually seem like dismissible qualities, if that's even a word now, because they seem cheesy in a world where cutting corners and simply doing whatever you have to do to get your way, that seems to be the rule of the day. But Solomon seems to be reminding us that the thing that might be truly foolish is expecting God to bless that. And so while there may be no advanced degree in anything called wisdom or any profession called wisdom, the question is, okay, Marcus, how can I be a pro in this wisdom thing if there's no specific lane called wisdom to run in? Well, wisdom is a component of whatever lane God has for you that fits your gifts and your talents. It is the way in which you go about accomplishing your goals and your ambitions. And so as Solomon is counseling his son, it seems that he is reminding his son that no matter what he is doing, the way he goes about it needs to be equipped with an understanding of righteousness, justice, and equity, and all the components of wisdom that Solomon is going to go on to describe. Otherwise, you shouldn't be surprised if an amateurish commitment to wisdom produces amateurish results somewhere in your life.